Hello, everybody. My name's Fish. I'm from the Let's Skol podcast with my partner, he who needs no introduction, and he who greets with smoke, Skolful Shaq. And we'd like to welcome
Howdy.
you to the first ever Let's Skol Power Rankings. And what we've done today is we've taken the 14 playoff teams now that they are set, and we've decided to list them in order in a power ranking where what we did was we took the consensus from all the members of the Let's Go podcast. That's myself, Shaq, obviously, our captain Keith, Cody, and Rinaldi. And by the way, if you're not happy with where your team is, it's probably because one of those other three listed them too low and dragged them down
Mhm.
some. So make sure you check in on Thursday at 8:30 when we go live Central Standard Time on YouTube and let them know how upset you are with them. But so it's a consensus and it's an average. And with that, I'm going to say, so Shaq, when you were doing your list, what were some of the things that made you be able to decide how you were going to rank these teams 1 through 14?
Well, I'm not gonna lie to the audience. I will say, from my rankings, it was more so based on the games I did catch. Like whenever the Vikings finished playing, and then we had some free time to watch over the other teams. I ranked them based on their wins and losses, um, players they have, and a little bit of the storyline. Like if this team was to win a Super Bowl, how would that impact the NFL 2024-2025 season storyline?
Hmm. Yeah. That's a lot more in depth than me. See, I hate power ranking, Shaq. I just every time I watch see one, I just get upset. And I'm like, why? And I think it's because in general, I feel like the people who typically do power rankings are afraid to admit that they got it wrong.
Hmm.
So if a team is ranked fifth and they lose to a team who's ranked 20th, the team who's ranked fifth might drop one spot. And I just think, well, I don't know, man. Maybe that warrants something more than that.
Yeah,
So I tried to look at things like notable wins and how they finished the season and their overall record and general strength and all that. And with that, let's go ahead and kick this thing off. And I'm going to start it with the team that we ranked number 14 in the playoffs, and that would be the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers finished with a record of 10-7. Now, they did kind of back into the playoffs. They lost four straight to finish the season, but let's be real. Who did they lose to? The Eagles, the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Bengals.
all
They
pretty
did
good
have
teams.
some, yeah, they did have some notable wins in their season. Early in the season, they beat the Broncos and the Chargers. Midway through the seasons, they beat the Commanders and the Ravens. And overall through the season, their offense was ranked 23rd and their defense was ranked 12th. What you got to say about that, Shaq?
Well, the Steelers, I know they have Mike Tomlin, who used to be a Minnesota Viking. A lot of old school Vikings fans say, "Oh, we had Mike Tomlin, we let him go." Yeah, he's a good coach. He never had a losing season. It's just I feel like the Steelers is the epitome of right above average. Like after you see average, you see the Pittsburgh Steelers right there above average. They're not gonna woo you with the spectacular, and they're not gonna give you a snooze fest.
Hmm.
Um, I know they do have a couple players I do like. They got the stars T.J. Watt. Um, they got George Pickens, who can be a hothead. Um, Off the field and on the field, he could be a hothead, but he's a good receiver. They got Najee Harris, who I would love to have on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, the culture. I feel like the Steelers got the perfect culture. So no matter how good the talent or how bad the talent is, they at least stay a little bit above average.
Fair enough.
And they're also throwing a tidbit. They started with Justin Fields and then they benched him. I want to say like week 4 when Russell Wilson was healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a quarterback change mid-season, and they only paying Russell $1 million and some change.
Yeah. Speaking of Russell, that probably leads you into the next team on the list, right, Shaq?
Yeah, the next team on the list is the Broncos. Speaking of, Russell Wilson leaving from Denver going to the Steelers, they decided to draft a quarterback and Bo Nix. So, the Broncos, they finished 10-7. It was 4-2 to finish the season. They had wins against the Chiefs, who was resting their starters. So, I don't know
Wins a
how I feel
win.
about that. Wins a win. That also caused them to knock out the Bengals, who was striving for that last seed in the AFC. So, I guess that's a win-win for the Broncos and Kansas City, who didn't want to see the Bengals in the playoffs. They also beat the Buccaneers early. Their offense was ranked 19th and the defense was ranked 7th.
Seventh ranked defense. So that kind of carries over because when they were playing with Russell Wilson and they were struggling last year, the defense was kind of carrying the load. And you look at Sean Payton, what's this, his second year coaching the team?
Mm-hmm.
He's had to make some of the tough moves, like they've had to get rid of Russ and they had to eat a lot. They were paying him a lot to play somewhere else.
Yep.
And they drafted their quarterback, Bo Nix, who I was not high on coming out of the draft. And he seems to be doing pretty good. I think he's thrown for 3,700 yards in his rookie season, and that's nothing to sneeze at. So all in all, I mean, the Broncos have done a great job. Rookie quarterback is playing strong defense, enough to get into the dance and maybe play a spoiler. And maybe they might spoil the next team on our list, because coming in at number 12 is the Houston Texans.
Ooh.
The Houston Texans, with a record of 10-7, finished the season 3-2 to win their division. Their notable wins early on in the season where they beat the Bills, and that's something. Their offense was ranked 22nd in the league, and their defense was ranked 6th. And I think a lot of that low-ranking offense has to do with they lost Stephon Diggs really early in the season, right? And then Tank Dell had that horrific injury, so Joe Mixon was pretty good, but he was injured for a little bit early in the season. And so really C.J. Stroud had to kind of do it himself without a lot to work with, and he kind of had a little bit of a regression himself. What say you?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Texans was like the all-season darling that the national media had, giving the Chiefs a fight for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. And I guess, C.J. Stroud kind of had like the sophomore slump. Once he started losing his weapons and, inconsistent play from the offensive line, we talk about how our offensive line is up and down. When you look at the Texans play, it's always looking like C.J. Stroud always has to roll out to get a pass off.
Yeah, fair enough. But now leading us to the next team on the list, they have no problem with offense. Buccaneers were 10-7, Shaq. They finished 6-1 to win their division. Notable wins early on, they beat the Commanders and the Lions and the Eagles. Later on, they ended up whooping the Chargers. Their offense was ranked 3rd, and their defense is ranked 18th. So look out. They can get it. Man, Baker Mayfield, right? He's getting it done.
Yeah. So, my bad, Fish. My computer's freezing up and stuff, but I can still see. So I'm going to say, Tampa Bay, they got Baker Mayfield, who's in a similar predicament to Sam Darnold. They came out the same draft class, and they're not with their original teams, both with top 3 picks. And people were starting to see him kind of leaning towards a bust. And then he had that resurgence once Tom Brady retired, came to the Buccaneers, took them to the playoffs, and he didn't look back. They also got, Mike Evans still proving it that he's a good receiver. And that run game, I did not expect that run game to be as good as it was. Bucky Irvin, he was a running back I kept an eye on, but he's better than I thought he would be. coming out of college. So, Tampa Bay Buccaneers is a team to watch out for in the playoffs.
Yeah, buddy. A team we might see sooner than later. And I tell you what, another surprise team is number 10 on our list, and that's those Washington Commanders. With the quarterback that was number 1 in my draft once, but I knew it was unrealistic, Jaden Daniels. They finished 12-5. They won 5 straight to finish and get in the playoffs. Notable wins late in the season, they beat the Eagles. That offense is ranked 7th, and their defense is ranked 13th, and I feel like they're dangerous. I think they might be one of the most dangerous teams in the playoffs. What do you think?
They are. I'm just banking on if we play them, their inexperience should help us win that game. Because, like, the game that comes to my mind when I watched the Commanders was how they lost to Dallas. That was a game that really confused me when, Commanders before the game, during the season, it's like Commanders was an overall better team. And yet they crumbled when they faced the Dallas Cowboys. So I know they had the potential, they have the talent. It's just experience for them.
Yeah.
You might have to bring up the next team because my
working
just
well, the next team would be the San Diego Chargers. Chargers, first year under Jim Harbaugh.
He sounds familiar.
Yeah, he sure does, don't he? 11-6, finished 4-2 to get in the playoffs. Their notable wins are that they ended up sweeping the Broncos. Surprisingly, when you've got Justin Herbert as your quarterback, your offense is ranked 20th, but their defense was ranked 11th. That kind of speaks to a change in what's the word I'm looking for? Identity for an offense, doesn't it?
Oh, it sure does. Because Justin Herbert first 3 years, they was just pass. I think he was up there with like Matthew Stafford and Kirk Cousins for like passing yards in the first couple years because all they did was try to gunsling the ball. And then what Jim Harbaugh did, which I want KOC to kind of do, and what the NFL should take a note of is just because you have an elite quarterback, some people might not see Justin Herbert as elite, good, or whatever, but just because you have a good, great, elite quarterback does not mean you have to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game to win the game. As long as you play good defense and keep the score low, what's wrong with 21-14, 21-10?
Yeah.
That's still
not to mention the fact the longevity of your elite quarterback, because I remember, what was it, last year where he was all heroic. He had like some cracked ribs or something, and he was playing through the pain to try to win a game. And weren't they playing the Chiefs at the time? And you think, man, you keep your elite quarterback upright and healthy, and when the time comes where he's got to open it up, he'll be there for you, and he won't be playing at 70%. He'll be closer to 100. So, yeah, I mean, nice identity. Harbaugh, he's been successful everywhere he's gone. And, I think the Chargers with Justin Herbert as their quarterback, they've only made the playoffs once before. And here they are with a better record and maybe built for success. And, that brings us to our next team, which really is built for success.
Before we move on to the next team, I'd just like to give a special shout out to J.K. Dobbins because the career he has had to come back this year and ball out, he deserves it.
Fantastic. Speaking of balling out, and I was surprised at the rankings on the next team because, we inherently hate them, but for the sake of objectivity, the number 8 team on our list is the Green Bay Packers. 11-6. Finished the season 3-3 to make the playoffs. Notable wins. Early, they beat the Rams and the Texans. Later, they beat the Seahawks. Offense ranked 5th. Defense ranked 5th. Where did this come from? I haven't really watched them play too much when we played them, and it's just like, wow.
So, we played them twice, and I feel like both games ended with us only winning by 2 points, but it kind of played out similarly. We was up
Mm-hmm.
big in the first half against them, and then they slowly came back, but they just couldn't pull it off. I feel like the Packers is similar to us. They are all or nothing team. It's either all they offensive plays is explosive, or they do dumb shit and get a turnover.
Could
But they
be.
also got the opportunistic defense. Besides us, they also caused a lot of turnovers with Xavier McKinney.
Fair that. Fair that. All right. So now we're moving on to the seventh ranked team in our power rankings, and that would be the
The
Los
Rams.
Angeles Rams.
I got my notes back, so we
Tenants,
good.
go ahead, sir. Take it.
So the Los Angeles Rams, the 10-7 Rams, 5-1 to finish the division. They also won it. They notable wins, one coming against the Bills and one coming against us, which could have possibly went either way. That game against us was kind of like a wake up call because we just, speaking of how things are about to go now, we just came off a loss against the Lions on a short week, and we had to play the Rams in LA. And that game, I know when they caught us off guard because we didn't think Puka and Cooper Kupp was going to be back, and we know he was going to be playing their fourth and fifth string receivers with Matthew Stafford. Then all of a sudden, game day, Puka and Cooper Kupp get activated, and then they just tear our secondary apart.
They were lethal. They were lethal.
Their offense is ranked 15th, and their defense is 26th. So I know most of the season, they probably could have had a better winning record if they was healthy to start the season.
I was just thinking the reason their offense was only ranked 15th was because Puka was gone for 5 games, and Cooper Kupp was gone for about the same amount. Because they kind of had a little bit of a losing streak in between when they played like the Lions in week 1 and then they played us. But yeah, man, once they got healthy, it was on. It sure was on. And now that moves us to the 6th team on our power rankings, the one that is near and dear to our heart, the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings, 14-3, finished the season 6-1. That one was painful. To make the playoffs. Notable wins. Early in the season, we beat the Texans and we swept the Packers. Vikings offense is ranked 12th. Defense is ranked 16th. And why don't you go ahead, sir, and tell me what you think.
12 to 16. So I guess Cody's not getting that money for the top 10 defense. But it's I'm not giving up hope yet on the Vikings because we're still top 15 in both offense and defense. It's just playoffs is a different game, and Minnesota we can't treat it like we're just playing a top 5 pick team. We gotta treat every team like it's a playoff team and it's time to go win a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. And I know we don't have that much experience outside of our old veterans, but the best way to get experience is by playing it, right? So we just got to learn on the fly. And I did have the Vikings ranked 5th, but it's not really much of a difference from 6th and 5th. One is just top 5 and one's outside the top 5. But yeah, I'm fine with them being 6th. If they would have beat the Lions, we could have had them way higher. It's just that game last night put us outside the top 5. And I would agree with
Absolutely. That. All right. So let's get into the top 5. Number 5 team in our power rankings are
the Philadelphia Eagles, our competition. So they finished with a similar record as us, 14-3. They were 6-1 to win the division. They notable wins, Packers and Commanders. They was 8th on offense, and they had the number 1 defense.
And that spells all kinds of problems, don't it?
It sure does, because usually, don't quote me on this, but I have a hunch that most Super Bowl winning teams, they have a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense to take them far into the Super Bowl once it gets to playoff time.
Well, you know what? It's a good thing that the 2 teams that have that are playing each other next weekend, so that way one of them will get knocked off.
That's what I like to hear.
Yes, sir. I mean, I remember hearing calls because I've got some family members who live up there who are Eagles fans, and I remember them talking about they wanted Sirianni gone.
Oh yeah, they did.
They wanted
Especially
Sirianni gone, and it was crazy.
if you look at how they because they started off hot last year and then they fizzled out completely towards the end of
Mm-hmm.
the season. They made the playoffs, but by the time after they once they clinched the playoffs, they didn't look like a playoff team, and it showed against the. I want to say they played the Buccaneers the first round and lost,
Mm-hmm.
and it showed that the Eagles kind of wasn't a complete team. Like they didn't have no identity. And then come this year, they signed Saquon Barkley. They got back to the run game, and they basically kind of defense, hard run football, and a couple passes to AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. And they also got not Brent Selleck, but their tight end. I can't think of his name right now.
Okay.
But they also got an elite tight end who also Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert, who helps out
Nice.
Jalen Hurts. So, he has a complete offense. And when I think of how I want to build the Vikings offense for JJ McCarthy, it would be how they built it for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, that could be reasonable. Now we're going to go to maybe a different kind of a QB with the team that's ranked number 4th in our power rankings, because now we're going to those MVP chance. And the number 4 team is the Baltimore Ravens. You know who their QB is. 12-5, finished the season 5-1 to win the division. Check out these notable wins from a team. Early in the season, they beat the Bills, the Commanders, and the Bucks. Midway through the season, they beat the Broncos and the Chargers. And late in the season, they beat the Steelers and the Texans. And that's a damn good run against playoff teams. While they did that, their offense was ranked first in the league and 10th on defense. And there's another team with 2 top 10 rankings, Shaq.
That's wild.
Kind of makes me wonder why they weren't top team in our power rankings, to be honest with you, after I've kind of spit all that out.
I mean, I did have them third, but that's like it's only one off. I guess it's just tough at the top. There's like you can't say one team is that much better than the other when you get to the top 3 or 4.
I guess. But man, they're going to be tough. They're going to be a tough out in these playoffs.
I've been saying since the regular season, the one team I'm actually pretty scared of is the Ravens because they're not afraid to just run the ball.
Yeah.
Whether it be with Derrick Henry or Lamar Jackson. And once they know you're tired from trying to stop their run, they're just going to hit the easy passes on you.
Zay Flowers having himself a season 2.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's move on to our third-ranked team in this power rankings. And this is a team where it's like, they look so beatable. They really do. But they just so happen to have probably the best football player in the league right now. And also they're the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Who also just beat our previous team to start the season. They beat the Ravens. So the Kansas City Chiefs, they was 15-2, asterisk, because they probably could have beat the Broncos if they would have played their starters. But they ended the season 15-2. 6-1, won the division in the last 7 games. The notable wins is the Ravens, Buccaneers, Texans, Broncos, Steelers, and they swept the Chargers. They ranked 16th on offense and 9th on defense.
But that guy, that 15th ranked offense is just so deceiving because once it's playoff time and that go button gets hit, that guy, I mean, wow. What can we say about this team that hasn't already been said? So long as they've got their quarterback and Travis Kelce and Chris Jones on the field, they can beat anybody.
Couple refs here and there.
No.
Couple refs.
So, yeah. But now, speaking of beating, the number 2 team on our list just put a whooping on the team that's near and dear to our heart, and that would be the Detroit Lions. The Lions had the greatest season in their franchise history, finished 15-2, won the division, won the 1 seed in the NFC, finishing 6-1 on the season to get there. Notable wins. Early, they beat the Rams. Midway through the season, they beat the Texans. And during the course of the season, they swept not only our beloved Vikings, but the Packers, too. Offense ranked second. And that defense says it's ranked 20th, but they didn't look like the 20th ranked defense Sunday night. So take it away, sir. What are you going to say about the Lions?
Well, they showed us that it's still a gap between us and them. Dan Campbell has this team thinking, I'm guessing, football 24/7, while the Vikings are thinking, house money, as David Ronaldo would say. Anything happens goes. It's we're just here, for the fun and all that. But Dan Campbell got the team thinking, today is the day we put everything on the line. Every Sunday, and then he just comes, shows up. No matter who's hurt on their defense, they still get the job done, and it confuses me because I know the talent that they have from Brian Branch, Laporta, Goff, Gibbs, but it's just so many other players, like their role players, are stepping up. And like when you got your role players stepping up, that's when you know you're a team that's competitive and really means business to compete for the Super Bowl. So I got to give my hats off to the Detroit Lions.
I will say this: Alex Anzalone came back from his injury, and he made a much bigger impact on their defense than I thought he would. He was a stud. He was a stud.
Yeah, he was definitely all over the place.
Yeah, he sure was. And with that, let's go ahead and unveil, obviously, the number 1 team in the Let's Skol Power Rankings for the 2024 playoffs. And that would be none other
the Minnesota Vikings.
The Buffalo Bills.
Buffalo.
13-4. Finished the season 6-2 while resting on week 18 to win their division. Notable wins midway through the season, they beat the Chiefs. Later in the season, they beat the Lions. And that offense is ranked 10th in the league, and that defense is ranked 17th. And Josh Allen is just on fire. I mean, he is just getting it done. When you consider how little skill position players he has that are just elite around him, it is absolutely amazing what that team is doing, how they are putting it together. They beat the other 2 best teams in the league. And man, it's playoff time, and Josh hasn't been able to knock the Chiefs off yet, but there's a pretty big sentiment that maybe this is the year. Maybe this is the year. What say you?
Yeah, I definitely believe Buffalo is one of the scariest teams in the AFC to dethrone the Chiefs. You got Buffalo, Ravens. Those are the top 2 teams, I'll say, who could probably knock the Chiefs off their high horse and stop them from three-peating. I got to give credit to Josh Allen. I've been giving Keith a lot of hell because I said without Stephon Diggs, he won't be able to take this team to the playoffs. And he proved me wrong. He got them there. Throwing to a rookie wide receiver, Keon Coleman, a couple running backs, and Ray Davis and James Cook, who actually stepped up. And, they just, like I said with the Detroit Lions, they're role players. Not name brand players, but they're role players who stepping up, helping them win games. That's kind of like the model for the playoffs. If you want to win in the playoffs, it's going to take a team effort, not just from your superstars, but from your backups and players who you need to, do a specific job for 1 or 2 plays.
Well said. Well said. So that's our first ever Let's Skol Power Rankings. Let us know in the
I need
comments
that.
what you think. And if you don't like where your team is placed, please come check us out on YouTube. Let's Go Podcast, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time on Thursday. And tell Cody, Keith, and Rinaldi how upset you are at how low they placed your team, because that's obviously what had to happen. I'm Fish. This is Shaq. Peace out.